is up, Baku gamers? Welcome to a blast from the past. This is Powercreep Boys 2019. Now, let me preface this by saying, yes, this is about exactly a year too late. This deck will not get you anywhere in the upcoming meta Fusion Force. Why is that? Now, to address that, we have to look at the first two Bakugan in our lineup. Aquos Cubbo and Pyrus Nobilius Ultra. Now, what made them super special and trendsetters this time last year was because they reached 1350 on a magic shield, which for that time was absolutely outrageous. When Pyrus Nobilius was the first of these quote-unquote power creep boys to hit the scene, it made an impact. Either you ran these Bakugan or you had to use up cards before they even had to touch their energy pile. Now, Hydranoid was the first 1450 of his kind and was even more impeccable because he hit it on a Fire Fist, which gave him inherent damage, but now we have Hydrus nowadays, which beats him by 50 B power and 1 damage to boot. So keep that in mind with the lineup. This will not get you nearly anywhere in today's meta, especially with Sync coming in the horizon on Fusion Force. Hydrus easily replaces Cubbo. There's actually a PCB 2020 that I will go over in the upcoming week, and that'll be a more modernized version of this list. It still has Hydranoid, thank God, but it's mainly just because of his Evo. But Cubbo and Nobilius are pushed by the wayside because 1350, as crazy as it was a year ago, it does not stand up to the 1450s that are the bare minimum today. If you want to just see the deck profile in its entirety all laid out for you, skip to the end of the video. Our adventure sadly ends here, but if you want a description on why I picked all these cards and the competitive uses for every single card, feel free to continue watching the video as is. If not, I'll put a timestamp here to where you can skip to where you just see the deck profile, look at it, absorb it, and you can go on with your day. As I said before, the main reason you use Hydranoid is not only for his outstanding 1450 unbeatable B power at the time, but he came with the most absurd Evo at the time, and it still stands to be one of the best Evos in today's time. 4 cost for 2450 is absolutely ludicrous and has only been somewhat... there's nothing for that value that is even out right now. HTN hits 23 and Hyper Pega reaches 2250 for 3, so you could say that's about as much for the value you're putting in, but nothing has come close to Aurelus Titan Hydranoid's inherent advantage. Now, that being said, 3 quick fire. It's just a very good inherent reroll, especially in such a core-centered deck. You need to land on your magic shields. You need to land on your Fire Fists during those Midas Indius turns. Spoiler alert, we run Midas Indius in Mac. And it's quick fire. So the meme with it is that you can end a game when they have 0 cards in deck just by activating this card. Tides. Yes, this is what we had back in the day. That's what we had to use. And you are usually spending a lot of cards during any given turn because this deck is very fast-paced. It is dominant during the early game, but it kind of tapers off towards the late game to mid game, and that's why Hydranoid is so important with that Evo, because it keeps you in the game, that mid to late game where it would normally be trying for you otherwise. Now, Dark Waters, another reroll, very good, 200. It usually lets you beat the mirror match. Whoever, it's basically like the Hydrus nowadays, where it's like, do you have the Dark Waters? Do you have anything that boosts B power? Do you have the Nature's power? Okay, you got turn 1. It was essentially that back in the day, and one could argue whether or not that's healthy for the game state. That's not my place right now. We're in 2019, all right? Deep Dive, 1 cost, draw 1 reroll. It is a reroll for the effects that I stated previously, but in tandem with Shun, which you should expect that in this deck coming up soon. It is very good. Drawing 2 just out of nowhere is the advantage in this deck gets fairly crazy. Shun just enables a lot of wonky tonk. Now, speaking of Shun, super fueling into Shun turn 1 just makes your deck steamroll whatever is in front of you. You don't mind losing turn 1 because you're not gonna have a lot of damage dealt to you turn 1. Name one Bakugan that'll do that, like outside Fury, but Fury without their Midas Indius is usually not competing with your inherent big B power besides their own hydranoid, which they usually would be using turn 1, but they don't have B power cards themselves, so it's mainly going to resort in a tie, and hopefully you have the bigger energy on the top of your deck, because they will more than likely have just as many low-cost cards as you. 3 Blinding Ink says no to that Midas Indius. This is inherently a big B power deck. That is what makes Powercreep Bois so good. So when it's not advantageous for you, you want that Midas Indius to be stopped. And of course, other cards that become problematic to you. Midas Indius, again, as I said, you only want Midas Indius to go off when it is advantageous to you, and that's it. And you can hit those numbers fairly easy with Cubbo, because he's naturally 5 damage and on a +6 Fire Fist, and if you're the one activating Midas Indius, that is 12 damage. Not a lot of things outside of Fury can match up with that, and it is just a free win for the turn unless they respond with their own Blinding Ink. Liquid Arts, one of the big power cards in this deck, one of the cards that just excelled it past a lot of other decks, especially turn 1. It is a 3-cost card, but if you have an Aurelus Bakugan on your team, aka Hydranoid, you can play it for 2 less. So turn 1, you would get 400 B power. A year ago, that was unheard of. There were not these wonky 1900 sync plays. This was the gas. And this finally made running Aurelus worth it when it just lacked your card pool. Like, you just did not have any cards that Aurelus could play. And I actually really like this concept of maybe not having Aurelus have a card pool, but having other cards that say, hey, if you have Aurelus, if you missed out on that chance to have a 3rd slot, I can have an extra boost. I really like that, and I wish they went further in with Aurelus power, because Aurelus is just irrelevant. Like, going into Fusion Force, no one even wants to touch this faction. 3 Wave Slash, believe it or not, 1000 is ridiculous for 3 cost. That used to be what you have to do to get 1000 B power, let alone you have to activate something earlier in the turn, so that could be your Quickfire, any of your various rerolls, this could be a turn, or Super Fuel into it. There are a lot of ways to get out Wave Slash easier than one would assume. This is usually a turn 4 card unless you have a 0-cost card, and that is usually, like, this 0 cost for 1000 that's going on in Fusion Force is just ridiculous. But we're in 2019. We're blissfully ignorant of the future. Now, this is a controversial one. As I said, I very much like the Aurelus power, and this could easily be 3 Fierce Charge. This could easily be 3 of the 3-cost Outsiders flip for Aurelus. You could run that. I don't run any flips in this because, 1, Aurelus, Aquos, and Pyrus have no good flips in this format. Nowadays you can run Constrictor because Helix are being seen a lot more often, but back in the day they had no good flips. And that was sort of the trade-off for just having such an amazing early game, is that whatever hits you were being sent your way, you were taking them. Now, I actually recommend that you use 3 Fierce Charge, but I'm using more of an aggro build with this deck. You're free to use whatever you want in this build. This is just a template, and you'll see as we go on with further deck lists, Bakugan gets to a point where the decks just sort of make themselves. Sinkhole, to stop your opponent's max as well as anything problematic, mainly just Midas Indiuses, Wave Slashes, anything. 3 Shun Kazami, as I said earlier in the deck list, this was an inevitability, and it gives you such an inherent advantage over your opponent just drawing every single turn, and if you have rerolls, forget about it. It is just a ridiculous amount of advantage that Llusion lends you. And now, 2 Mac to finish it off. Again, you only want Might and Mac to go off when you want it to. And that's the deck profile. That's PCB 2019. That was the deck that was going around causing a bunch of mayhem. Just big B power, no answers, draw your whole deck. It was good, man. It was a fun time seeing that at literally every table. Now, if you want your deck to be the most consistent it can be, you want your deck to have 12 3-ofs and 2 2-ofs. This will max out the consistency of your deck, allowing you to see anything that you want that is your 3-ofs. You are more than likely going to draw into those. And your 2-ofs, just inherently, they have to be, because 12 times 3 is 36, and that leaves only 4 more slots, so that can be 2 and 2, because you want to see those cards fairly consistently as well. This is the lineup to max out consistency. As I said, those wildfires can very well be fierce charges, and that's pretty much it. That's the line of logic for having the 12 3-ofs and 2 2-ofs. You don't want too many 2-ofs because you're not going to see what you want, and you're not going to get advantage over your opponent as fast as you would like to. Yes, Llusion draws out the majority of your deck, but I wouldn't rely on that as much as you could literally just win in deck building phase and get a bunch of 3-ofs. That's literally as easy as it can get. So, with that being said, you guys have a great day. Be safe, do good choices, have yourself a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys when I see you.